There's a moment in your life that nobody can prepare you for. And it's when the very traits and skills that once made you strong, being the reliable one, the one who could carry anything on your shoulders, the problem solver, those skills and traits start to turn against you. And that's because the skills that got you here are not the strengths that are going to take you where you want to go. And if you don't understand how to make this shift, you end up battling yourself. And in this episode, I'm going to show you how to retire the old version of you and step into the version that your next level of life requires. This is the playbook nobody gives you. If you're feeling stuck, if you're in that foggy middle zone where something in you is ending but the next chapter hasn't fully arrived yet, you're not lost, you're evolving, and you're absolutely going to love this episode. Guys, life has cycles and rhythms. There's actually a map, an intelligent design to how you grow and evolve. I'm going to break it down for you in this episode because if you're in your 40s or your 50s and you're feeling stuck, this is likely the reason. Now, in your 20s, just so we can understand where this map starts, it's chaotic experimentation. You're trying everything. Your identity's in flux. I remember I wanted to be a screenwriter for movies. I graduated college and worked at Nickelodeon as a production assistant. Then I got into an online business, and from there I got into business development and search engine optimization. I was all over the place, but that is the point of your 20s. In your 30s, things start to get dialed in a little bit. There's a refinement. It is a fine-tuning, an eliminating of what didn't work in your 20s, doubling down on what did work, and you're starting to build structure. Not only the structure of your life, like a family and a career and a direction, but a structure to your own identity. Now, in your 40s, things get dialed in even more. I would call it like a distillation. You get this clarity and this focus that emerges, but it's also when the proverbial midlife crisis occurs. Life has started to form patterns and meaning, but there's some challenges. And I'm going to talk about those challenges in this episode because in your 50s, that's where you get exponential growth. Yes, we hear these unicorns of these, dot-com billionaires or crypto billionaires that are in their 20s and 30s. I'm not saying that can't happen. Odds are, if you're watching this episode, that ain't you. But do not worry, because you can have exponential growth in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and even beyond now as we're extending our lifespan. But you have to understand how this game works, because the payoff in your 50s is a result of compounded growth. And the paradox of the 40s is that this is where we get stuck. And we get stuck for a very specific reason, right? We feel like the skills that got us to our 40s and allowed us to be very good at what we did are now becoming our worst enemies. For me, for example, it was problem solving. I was a great problem solver, very good at solving all kinds of problems, critically minded, critical thinker. The challenge is that if you're a good problem solver, guess what your neurology, your brain, your nervous system, your operating system over time are going to start to look for? Problems. And so part and parcel with being a great problem solver is being a great problem finder. And you might be experiencing this too. All of a sudden you got more problems than you know how to handle. Maybe you grew up in a chaotic environment, so you learned how to handle chaos, which was great. In the 20s and 30s, you were very adaptable. In your 40s, there's more chaos than you know what to do with. And so what we find is these identities that we developed at a very early age, right? I'm very good at making other people happy. Now all of a sudden, I don't even have any time for myself because I'm pleasing so many other people. Build up a momentum in our 40s and it starts to crush us. And by the way, this is by design, and it makes sense from a neurophysiological standpoint because what works continues to overextend its reach. Your operating system goes, well, this has been useful for us, so let me try applying the same approach, the same methodology, the same personality into these other areas of my life, except that those other areas of your life aren't really appropriate for the application of those habits, those thoughts, of that identity. But it happens. So now all of a sudden we find ourselves everywhere we look, and what we once used to be good at addressing has now become really like an avalanche of crisis in our life. And without conscious awareness, this is why the 40s can become the lost decade. So what's also important to understand as we begin to move into the solution is that this is where purpose begins to install itself naturally in your 40s. Because after decades of experience, you can finally see what you're meant to do, right? So, for example, for me, I always grew up feeling like there was something wrong with me, The coping mechanism for that was that I became academically astute. I became very good at school. I never felt like I was being heard, so I actually became very articulate in the way I expressed myself. What you'll find is that our gifts always emerge out of our wounds or our insufficiencies or inadequacies. And then we find connection and safety in the world as a result of these gifts, but remember, they're coping mechanisms for our traumas, for our inadequacies. So, I get into college and I'm a pretty smart kid. I went to Columbia University. I was ambitious, chasing success because I figured success was a way that I could approve of myself and find love and connection. I started building my own businesses. But as I got into my 40s, right, this overthinking, this almost over-ruminating, this finding problems everywhere began to encroach upon my life. And at the same time, I had a lived experience, which was, if this is not the first time you've listened to this show, I went through drug and alcohol and sex addiction recovery. I found recovery. I found personal growth. And so in my 40s, my purpose started to emerge, which was to build a personal development company. But I had to actually change the way I was doing that and begin to retire some of my old habits, start to reclaim sovereignty over some of my skill sets so that they didn't rule my life, so that I could actually utilize them where appropriate, but I wasn't a victim of my habits of personality. So 40s are a really beautiful decade because your purpose emerges based on your lived experience, but you also have to deal with your old self in order to unlock the potential that is possible for you and step into a new version of yourself. That's the transition to the 40s. And what's so beautiful about that is that if you can successfully do that, you skyrocket into your 50s. I think about the clarity that you gain in your 40s as a result now of 4 decades of lived experience. It's like those optical illusion pieces of art in the 90s. Do you remember those where it just looked like geometric shapes, but when you'd stare at it or squint at it long enough or in just the right way, like all of a sudden the unicorn pops out of it, like the hidden image suddenly appears? That's what happens in your 40s, right? The opportunity emerges. So the 40s are a pivotal decade for reclaiming control over these ingrained habits and directing them toward greater success, expanded wealth, continued personal growth. Okay, but I just want you to understand that this is a normal process because if you're in your 40s or maybe even into your 50s or maybe you're a quick start and you're in your 30s and you're experiencing what I'm sharing with you. You used to be really, really good at being detail-oriented, but now you find yourself micromanaging everything. That's another great example. This is what's happening, right? Your nervous system is ready for transformation. Your purpose is starting to evolve. And if you can learn how to let go of your old identity and start to open up the possibility of doing what you've always done differently, then you can navigate effectively through your 40s. So again, your 20s were for experimenting, your 30s were for building, your 40s are for actually becoming. And then in your 50s, that's where everything accelerates. Not because you push harder, but because you finally stop pushing against yourself. And this is what you'll find as you're going through like the great transition of the decade of the 40s, is no matter how hard you work, you can't work hard enough to overcome this neurology that has overstayed its welcome, right? These beliefs, this nervous system, these skills that you developed early on, which were coping mechanisms for your early age trauma that are now ready to be transformed. They're ready to no longer be the predominant part of your personality, but just tools that you can use from a higher self perspective, right? So you don't need more force, you don't need more discipline, you don't need to carry more weight. You've already proven that you can do that. At this stage of life, the question is no longer how much can I handle? The question is, what am I ready to let go of? And this is really important, right? One of the things I had to let go of was this idea that I was not as far along as I should be. That was creating a lot of pressure for me. That was causing me to be hypervigilant around everything that I was observing. That was allowing this problem identification, problem solving part of me to go on hyperdrive. This idea that I was not as far along as I should be. This idea that I needed to do everything right, that I needed to make the right decisions, that there was such thing as a right decision or a wrong decision. I had to retire that idea. And a lot of the pain that this, what I would call like compression or contraction brought to me was what motivated me to actually go out and seek a better perspective on reality. And this idea that I wasn't as far along as I should be was crippling for me and causing me to activate all of these skills that I had developed that then just suffocated me even more. And I had to get to a point that I could really philosophically not only just understand, but also integrate that like in every moment I'm exactly as far along as I should be, right? And I'd like to be further along, like I have goals and dreams, but realizing that the way to actually achieve my goals and dreams, to materialize what I want to in my future, was to be in acceptance and grateful for where I was right now. Hey, it's David. Quick announcement before we get back to your episode. Our annual event, the Powerful Living Experience, is coming up. There's a link in the show notes, or you can visit powerfullivingexperience.com. Check out the video of last year's event. We're going to be bringing together 1,000 impact-driven entrepreneurs, leaders, and game changers to spend 3 days doing what matters most. Going really, really deep on identifying the limiting beliefs and subconscious programs that are still preventing you from your full potential, and going through deep experientials and trainings and transforming them. We're also going to be getting into concepts like wealth creation, purpose, greatness, money, relationships, health. And if you're an entrepreneur, we're going to be spending about 20% of that event opening up my business playbook, the same strategies and tactics and techniques that we use to go from $0 to $30 million in an impact-driven business, while spending 90% of my time doing what I love. There's nothing like the Powerful Living Experience. Inc. named it a top 3 must-attend personal development event for entrepreneurs and leaders, and I want to see you there. We've got some discounted tickets right now, plus some additional bonuses. Again, all the information is in the link in the show notes, or you can jump on over to powerfullivingexperience.com, get registered, and I will plan on seeing you there along with 1,000 other impact-driven, incredible members of our community for 3 days that you will never forget. And now, back to your regularly scheduled episode. I always felt like I had to be a perfectionist, make the right decision or wrong decision, until I realized, wow, there's no such thing as a right decision or wrong decision. You can't predict the future. You can just do the best you can based on the information you have and the intuition that you're experiencing. And the beautiful thing is that you can make a decision and life will actually make it right for you. You know, life has this way of, no matter what path you choose, kind of building the bridge in front of you, right? Plank by plank by plank, redirecting and recoursing itself to somehow allow you to walk to your final destination, regardless of the decisions that you make. So as I started to really understand this, I was able to let go of these old programs that were crippling me. And this is important because the moment you release the identity that was built from pressure, you create space for the identity that's built from purpose, right? The strengths that once kept you safe, they don't get to define who you become. And this next chapter is not about becoming more, it's about becoming true. True to your understanding of how reality works, true to your understanding of yourself. I want to give you a simple framework to be able to navigate through this period of time. And the first piece of the framework is actually just an awareness. Just know that the tension that you're feeling right here, right now, is not about not working hard enough. It's not about you being wrong or fundamentally broken. It's this building up of a neurological momentum that is ready to be released, right? You've got these incredible skills. It's great that you've developed them over time, but they're not useful in the volume of application that you're applying them to your life or your business or your health or your relationships right now. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to actually, when you see yourself applying these skills, right? Problem solving, micromanaging, people pleasing, to actually give yourself some space and step back from the way that you have been doing things to allow a new solution to emerge. And this can be the scariest part, because you may not yet know how else you can be with the situation, but the solution, the answer to how else can I be other than utilizing the same skills or tools that I've been using, is to actually create some space. And this can be challenging because over time, you've built up an automatic response. In other words, you've built an unconscious competency to run that same play over and over and over again. So that's why step 1 is so important, the awareness. Step 2 is actually allowing for some space. Allow for some space. So I'll give you a real world example. As I mentioned before, I'm a problem solver. Carol and I were having challenges in our relationship. I always wanted to solve the problem. You know, if she had a need or a complaint or a criticism, I wanted to try to address that. That's what I do, as a problem solver. But the challenge is my relationship was presenting problem after problem after problem after problem, because if you're a problem solver, you're going to become a great problem finder, and then life will create problems for you to find and solve. And in this case, it was showing up in the realm of my relationships. And so it seemed very illogical at first, but when I became aware that my tendency was to problem solve, I decided to stop solving the problems. And this was really a beautiful experience, because Carol would present with something. You know, she'd say, hey, I feel like you haven't been present in our relationship and you've been thinking too much about work or whatever goes on in your crazy, beautiful mind. And rather than try to solve it, I would just allow her to share that and be in the discomfort of the space of her sharing that without needing to solve it. And that's where the magic happened. What I learned actually was by not trying to solve it by giving it space, Carol was able to express herself. And that was actually the most important thing for her, was the ability to express herself. My problem solving was actually silencing my wife's ability to express herself and express her emotions, and shows she was bottling it all up. And so oftentimes it would build up and come out sideways in some situation or circumstance that I didn't even understand. And by no longer allowing the problem solver to be the dominant personality, I gave her some space. In that space, not only was she able to share, which is really what she craved, but I was able to hear her differently. I was able to hear a different set of needs that she had. I was able to listen and, again, be a place for her to authentically express herself. And in that space, we started finding what we felt like we were missing, even though I was trying to solve the problem of missing it, which was intimacy in the first place. So notice, no matter what it is, whether you're trying to solve your problems in business, whether you're trying to solve your problems in your financial world, whether you're trying to heal your body, whether you're trying to improve your relationships, that you have go-to plays that you will run. Step 1 is become aware of it. Step 2 is simply allow for the space. And step 3, which isn't even a step that you need to actively participate in, it's actually something that you receive as a result of the courage to give space, the courage to not run the old plays that you're unconsciously competent in, is that you will have a new distinction or awareness that comes to you. And that will help redefine the way that you look at reality. It will help redefine the way that you interact with the experiences of your life. And that's what starts to catalyze the change within you. I don't have to solve all the problems in the world today. What I need to do is create space to allow a power greater than myself to show up with the solutions in the space that I courageously allow. That's a significant shift in the way I view the world, and it's a significant shift in who I am as a human being, as David Baer. The David Baer of his 30s and 40s was a David had to justify his own self-worth by being the smartest person around and solving all the problems. The David in my late 40s and 50s, as I navigated through this transformational period, this transformational decade, is someone who's a lot more humble and doesn't need to do it all on my own, and realizes, frankly, anything I achieve isn't really something I achieve. It's always a byproduct of a power greater than me, right? I allow the magic to happen in my life. And so in that way, I'm stepping into my 50s as a wiser David. And I get to participate in that compounding interest. I get to leverage all the beautiful skills that I've developed, many of which came out of my traumas and my childhood experiences. I get to leverage all of the wisdom that I've gained through my lived experience over the course of the last 40 years, 50 years. And I now get to experience the new tools and the emergent personality and identity that I'm experiencing as a result of being willing to say no to this overdeveloped neurological phenomenon that began to suffocate me in my 40s. So if you feel like you're very good at a certain set of things, but those things are now actually the things that are suffocating you in your life right now, just know that you're going through the great journey of your 40s. Could happen a little earlier, could happen a little bit later, and there's a way to navigate through it. Number one, be aware of this conversation. Be aware of the plays that you're used to running, and just know that if you think you're good at something, life is going to give you more of that to deal with. And so if you don't want to get inundated or avalanched with problems or friction or people that you need to please or situations that you need to micromanage, now's the time to start to retire the set of tools that you've developed. How do you do that? You notice when they become activated in the day-to-day experiences of your life, and you allow for space. Yeah, but Dave, what do? I can't tell you. It'll become clear to you within the space that you allow what the new opportunity and emergent possibility is for you. That will then catalyze new skills for you. That'll start to spark this new personality, and this becomes the wise version of you. And the beautiful thing now is that you get to leverage that as you move forward. All of this is the compounding interest that you get to benefit from, and this is actually how you close the gap between everything that you've been envisioning and aspiring for in your life and what's really been waiting for you as you move into this next chapter of your journey. So I hope you love this episode as much as I loved sharing it with you. I know that this is something a lot of people experience. If you think that somebody you know might be going through this experience, please share this episode with them. If you have not yet and you're following along on the audio platform, subscribe. YouTube, same thing. Hit that bell icon. Leave me a comment or a question. I try to read as many of them as possible. And by the way, if you want to go deeper on all of this, jump on over to davidbear.com. Check out our live events, our books, our courses. This is not a do-it-yourself project. This is something that we do together. So I love you very much. Thank you for allowing me this time with you, and I will see you in the next episode.